I think the less I know, the better off I am. And maybe that's not meeting your loved one where they're at, but the less communication I have, the better off I am, because this has been a long, long journey.
I'm wondering if anybody has difficulty delineating between empathy and codependency. Like, do you struggle with having empathy, but yet staying off the beach with the empathy?
I definitely, that's my problem right now. I'm trying to work through it.
Yeah, I can see. I think that that's it. I mean, Scott, I can only speak for myself, but I think that probably at least 99% of us on this call can understand exactly what you're talking about. There's Jason Coombs in the flesh. Does anybody, like, I would love to be able to support Scott right now and let, as we do this together, just somebody to speak to that difficulty of having empathy, but not allowing that to turn into codependency, and being able to keep strong emotional boundaries with empathy. Linda.
I think that we were stuck there for quite a long time on codependency rather than empathy, and how it manifested itself with our son. He would call when he was really drunk and starting to detox and do what it sounds like what Scott's son was doing, which I imagine happens to everyone. I don't want to die, I want to live. And so we would, will you go to a detox center? Please go to a detox center. And we'd be so connected emotionally to that we couldn't let go of it. So we'd stay on the phone with him for hours. You won't go to a detox center, please. We don't understand why you won't go. And so this last time, we just said, we're understanding. I mean, we're trying to get off the beach and have that empathy instead of codependency. Will you go to a detox center? And he said, I'll think about it. And we just said, well, will you call us when you're okay, when you're feeling better? And so that was a big first step. But I know that for a long, long time, we got caught up in that other. And, we know he knows what to do. And us trying to get him to do it didn't make any difference at all. So it was a baby step, but it made a difference for us.
Thanks, Linda. Yes, go ahead. I'm trying to unmute you. There you go.
Trying to unmute myself. It wasn't letting me. I think at the beginning, I think that is hard for all of us because you love your child so much, or your spouse, whoever. For me, somebody made a comment once that it struck with me that there's only one savior and it's not me. And that really hit hard. And so my prayer then became, here is my son. I'm laying him at your feet. You're in charge. And I just kind of had to let it go like that. And I did tell my son, we love you. And I've said this on here before, but we will help you in your recovery, but not in your addiction. So call us when you're seeking recovery. And he knows that there's boundaries, that he can't ever come home inebriated or anything like that. But anyway, that really helped me a lot. That was my prayer. I just had to physically almost imagine me turning him over to the Lord and just saying, he's yours, not mine. So anyway, that was helpful for me.
Thank you.
I'd like to chime in if I may. Can you hear me all right? Hey, good to see everybody. I appreciate your flexibility as I just got off of a plane and I'm in the observatory room at the airport, and it's loud when they come over the microphone. So I'm going to hopefully be able to mute myself when it gets too crazy. But I do want to just follow up on this empathy piece. And I remember, Scott, when you asked me directly, how do we show empathy without rescuing and without enabling. And honestly, empathy isn't empathy without boundaries. According to Brene Brown, that's exactly what she teaches us, is that in order to have true empathy, there's got to be those boundaries in place. And so I don't want to miss that piece, because I think the difference between enabling and empathy and really being in feeling with someone doesn't necessarily mean that that you are carrying the madness on yourself, or carrying the burden on yourself, but having that boundary up. And we talk about strong fences make great neighbors, and that's a metaphor used often in business regarding contracts, but it absolutely applies with the family relationships with someone who is struggling with addiction, because it's those firm boundaries, the fences that we'll get into in these calls, that allow the empathy to be more pure, because then you're not in feeling with them where you're taking on all of their anxiety and their fear on top of all of your anxiety and fear, but it's much more from across that safety bridge, or across the fence. You're able to get into feeling with someone else, but then quickly move over into living your own life again, after you show empathy. And for me, in my opinion, it's more about how to communicate with that principle of empathy, and how to act with that principle of empathy, versus being an empathetic person at all times, because it's really difficult for me, for I think anyone, to just be an empathetic person completely at all times. But if we can get good at practicing empathy before we react or before we act in our relationships with our addicted loved one, then we're more likely to communicate in a way that's going to evoke and foster internal motivation versus resistance. And that's kind of where we're going in the book, is in regards to self-efficacy and in regards to rolling with resistance. Empathy has been repeated a number of times in the book, and that's because the way we are able to influence people, anyone, there's got to be that trust and rapport, and the trust and rapport come because they know that you are feeling what they're feeling, and that's when they will buy into what suggestions that you have. I should say, more likely they'll buy in. So anyway, that's my 2 cents. Jen, you're doing such an awesome job. I'll just let you keep on rolling, because you're just amazing. So.
Are you sure?
Oh, I'll still be here, but
Okay.
it's pretty
All right.
loud back here.
I would love to be able to add self-efficacy to this conversation today. And we can, of course, go back to the empathy piece, but I think that there is a connection to those two. So is anybody willing on page 145 to read the self-efficacy piece?
I can do that.
Great. Thank you, Doug.
Okay. Another vital principle to anchor our approach is to support self-efficacy. Self-efficacy is a person's belief and confidence in themselves that they actually do have the ability to change. Efficacy instills sufficient hope and motivation in the leap from preparation into taking difficult action. As addicted people, we experience a deep core belief that says, I'm a failure or I'm inadequate. This and other beliefs of self-hatred and shame are common with people who suffer from addiction. As an addicted population, we often feel deep in our core that we are unlovable, inadequate monsters who are not good enough. You may not see this side of us because we are professionals at masking low self-esteem with ego, false bravado, haughty or perverse pride, and self-importance. Coming to believe that we have the divine ability within ourselves to change takes time. In order to do that, we have to discover, or rather uncover, our strengths and abilities. Excuse me. This is a strength-based approach that sports the truth that an addicted person has within them the capabilities to recover successfully with the right help. Try supporting self-efficacy by focusing on successes and highlighting skills and strengths that the addicted person already has within them. The word namaste, practiced throughout the world, means to honor the God-given gifts within your addicted loved one. Even if you have to look hard to find it, there is greatness within him or her, I guess. Try practicing this principle with them and with everyone in your life. If you do, you will begin to see the world differently. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Dr. Wayne Dyer knew what he was talking about.
Thanks, Doug. Do you have any reflection about that?
We've been we've been seeing that with Tyler, I think, and Connie can jump in anytime. Um, we've been seeing that manifest itself in a lot of ways, and it's helped us to know that that's what he needs. That's uh, his counselor in Boise, who we've seen a few times without him there, um, had said some things that really hit home. I think, and Connie probably remembers the wording better than me, but it was something to do with all the adults have been making all my decisions, or other adults, if you will, make all the decisions for me, and he really wants to be able to make his own decisions. So that's what we've got a little distance because he's had a inpatient in another state and moving to a sober house in a couple of weeks as part of their program. And we've just taken a more or less hands-off approach, and is he's taking the incentive and the steps um, to make his own decisions going forward. So I think that's really been, we're hopeful, but it seems that's really been what he needed all along. And we did the typical thing of helicoptering in and, assuming that he can't make his own decisions properly. So it's that letting go, and the counselor recommended a book called The Language of Letting Go. Some of you may have heard of it. It's it's pretty good. It's got a daily read with a date on it, and there's just a part of a page each day that gives you some pieces of how to let go. So anyway, I'll shut up.
Thanks so much. I think that is so important. I look at myself if I just look at myself as an addict, before I had any sort of self-efficacy, when people made decisions for me, then I could blame those people for the outcome, right? And when people allowed my self-efficacy to be built, all of a sudden I was responsible for the outcome and I had buy-in for the outcome. And it completely changed my perspective on the way that I dealt with specific situations. It changed for me from being a victim. I like to call myself a warrior. I changed from being a victim to a warrior because all of a sudden I got to own my successes. I also got to own my failures, FYI, but I think more importantly, I got to own my successes. And I think especially when we're dealing with younger kids that are going through this process, we just want to fix it for them. And what it looks like to them is that we're just telling them what to do. They have no ownership in it. They have no self-efficacy. And therefore, we are still being blamed in their eyes, and they don't have to take any ownership. And so I think what you're talking about, Doug, is super important as we deal and walk through this with our loved one. Janae, I would love to hear what you're thinking about all of this morning, and welcome. I'm trying to there you go.
Did you say Janae? I thought you said Jeanette, and I was looking around.
Janae.
Hi, it's my first time here, so I'm listening to the Audible book on double speed. So Jason's voice is really fast to me right now, but I knew Jason in high school, so it's really cool to see everything he's doing. But can you ask me the question again? To me, I'm dealing with my husband. Dealing, I don't know, maybe that's not the right word, but it's a little bit different than having a kid that I'm concerned about. Not that I haven't been concerned about my kids as well, but what was your question?
So I just wanted to know what your thoughts were about either empathy or self-efficacy and how that has played a part in you walking through this with your husband. I think too, when I think about these two topics, early in this journey for me, I believed I couldn't have empathy and allow him to have self-efficacy at the same time. There was a blurred line for me. And so I validate those of you that are just starting this journey with a loved one, that sometimes that these two topics can be a little blurred. Because I think in those times there are, as Jason said, maybe we haven't been able to set the boundaries and get off the beach when we're talking about empathy and codependency. So I validate that as you walk through that. Ashley, welcome.
Oh, sorry, had to unmute. Thank you.
How are you feeling about all of this today?
Well, I was just really listening there. I think, so we've recently had some conversations about self-efficacy, which, right, my understanding is kind of their belief and in their ability, right, to be able to do whatever they need to do, whatever the task is. And so we've had some conversations about, you know, that belief in your ability sometimes comes down to that just self-worth. And I guess I just want to know or try to understand, you know, how to best support that. Like, it's hard because we just went through a really rough patch. Like last Thursday when we talked, I was a super hard day, and he actually ended up needing to be admitted at the hospital, and I had to go about, you know, my business for the rest of the weekend. I had to take my kids, and we had a cheer competition and all these things. And so, you know, I was able to kind of separate myself from that and still do the things that I needed to do, kind of like, you know, what you're talking about. But now as we kind of, you know, come back into like daily life, like it's hard because I want him to have that, you know, self-worth and that belief in his ability to do the things that he needs to do. At the same time, like currently there's a lot of boundaries in place because, you know, kind of the consequence of some of those actions, like trust is broken all over again, right? And he is you know, dependent on me for transportation and for some other things like that right now. So I don't know, maybe I'm doing it all like completely wrong. but right now, like I don't know, maybe there's like too much control right now, but also, you know, to eliminate some of those possibilities for another relapse. He is going to be starting, I believe, with outpatient with Brick House starting March 1st. And we're just kind of piecing together some recovery stuff in the meantime. he's been really good about that, like about participating in the noon calls and some of the other things. I guess I don't know. In my head, the question that I'm asking is like, how much do I allow him to kind of, I mean, when he does that, he's really good. When he goes off, then he's like, here, take my credit card, take my wallet, take my keys, take my this, take my that, as his way of saying like, like, I'll do whatever you need me to do. Just let me come back, and then we get a couple days into it, and I'm just not sure how much to let go. Or maybe I'll need to let go of it. I don't know.
Jason?
Yeah, I love that, Ashley. Thank you for sharing. What comes to my mind is that video that we showed a couple of weeks ago about the horse trainer and how these principles apply in terms of building a relationship, and it's a great metaphor. Let me see if I can quickly get there, and I'd like to show it to you. One sec.
Yeah, because I just joined last week, so I did not see that.
Okay. Give me one sec. I'm going to share my screen. You have to put up with it.
Hello, commercial.
We can't hear it, Jason.
Can you guys hear okay?
No.
You can't? Hang on. I'm going to fix that.
I will not force her to do anything. Okay?
Can you hear now?
So I'm going to turn her loose now. See her just decide to go away. So I'm going to say, fine, Krona, that's all right. But don't go away a little, go away a lot. And about 4 or 5 laps in each direction in a round pen like this will constitute a 1/4 of a mile. And then after you've negotiated your roughly 1/4 of a mile, I'm going to put her back in the same direction that she traveled at first, the original direction. And let's watch her communication with me. Let's see if this inside ear will find me and the outside ear will listen to the rest of the world. There it is. Inside ear already finding me like that. And the other ear on the outside moving to listen to the rest of the building. And that's the first gesture, generally speaking. And the second gesture is to make a smaller circle, which she just did. So there's all 4 gestures. Smaller circle, the ear, licking and chewing, and dropping the head down by the soil. Now I'm going to move in and just move her off me a little bit because I'm ready for join up. Square up, get her attention, and draw her to me. Moment of join up. Stand in front of her and reward her for that. And then walk away from her. Follow up. Holy moly. A miracle. Oh, my uncle told me about saddles too. He did? What did he say about them? He said, buck them off. Buck them off? Yep. Did he say why you would buck it off? He said they tickle. Well, this saddle might tickle a little bit, but no big deal. Mr. Roberts, if that saddle tickles, I'm going to buck it off. I'm going to put that tighter. And then we're going to put the second billet on, right up, so that it rides her, like so. Oh, my word. Oh, Krona. What is the deal? Help. I'm in trouble. I'm in trouble. Oh, my word, Krona. Krona, Krona, Krona. Hee, hee, hee. Oh, good girl. You trying to buck it off? Yes. I want to be your friend again. I want to come to you. I don't want to go away from you anymore. Now, this is unlike my father's method where you tie a leg up on them and you get a whip and you get things to frighten them with, tie them to a fence. Typical traditional stuff. Got to break the horse. But they don't come to you and they don't want to be your partner. They will simply wait until you've done enough to completely break them. I'm doing what I love to do and helping these wonderful animals called horses that have been so great to me. Starting with Ginger, my first horse, and Brownie, my second horse, and on to horses like Johnny Tivio with 4 World's Championships. Horses have been fantastic to me. And every time I see them misunderstood and treated harshly, I have to step up and try to help. Not blame anybody. I don't think anybody wants to be just demonic. I don't think people are just demons. But they don't understand. Learn the language equus. In 22 minutes, she has her first saddle on, her first long lines on, and making her first turns when asked by the reins. I would like it if Krona would do nothing but walk with Alex. Alex would like it too. She's already proven that she can buck. I'm going to just move her first. And then I'm going to put your foot in that stirrup now. Clear her backside now. And just give her a chance to feel you up there. Hey, easy, good girl. You be nice to him now. He's a good boy. And you can just begin to sit up now. Easy, good girl. Easy, good girl. We're just on 30 minutes, accepting her first saddle and rider and walking quietly. I love this. I was right about her, Kelly.
The owner says, wow, wow.
This is wonderful stuff. Look at this quiet mare that was just out here bucking a little while ago with that saddle on, never having had a saddle on before. Now you can stop and back up a step or two. Take a hold of those reins and just come right on back now. Good man. Okay. Down you come, son.
So,
We can't hear you.
all right. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So, as it relates to self-efficacy and rolling with resistance and empathy and the things that we talked about the last few weeks, like collaboration over confrontation, letting the horse run up front and actually encouraging it with the intent to build a relationship with that horse instead of forcing the horse's will. I think there are a lot of principles that we all can learn from that one example of building a relationship with a horse. And there's a lot that I would speak to regarding the self-efficacy piece. And ultimately, it's pretty much spelled out in there. And so I won't take a lot of time dissecting this section, because self-efficacy can be related to you as well. Ask yourself, in what area do you lack self-efficacy? If I were to ask you to run a triathlon race in the spring, how many of you would have the self-efficacy to do that? And how many would be like, yeah, I can do that. That's no problem. Well, it's the same when we're talking about helping someone recover from drugs and alcohol. At the end of the day, I don't know anybody who knows how to recover from drugs and alcohol. And so self-efficacy is always, always, always super low or non-existent. And trying to break that horse, or try to coerce your addicted loved one into treatment or into recovery creates a lot of resistance, even if it's passive aggressive resistance, because that piece of self-efficacy is missing. They don't believe that if they try, they can do it. They might tell you that they can do it, but at the end of the day, they don't know how to do it, or else they would have done it. And so, the reason why I think that this is an important principle to bring up at this stage in the book and at this stage in our calls is because a lot of times that resistance and the hesitancy to progress in recovery is masked as, oh, they're just in pre-contemplation, they don't want to change. When it really is, they just don't know how, and they don't have the confidence in themselves to do it. And so it manifests as pre-contemplation. It manifests as they don't care about change. It manifests in ego and bravado and being overly confident. I can speak to that in my own life. I did not know how to get and stay sober, but I showed up at my final treatment center thinking I could teach the class, thinking I could teach all the other residents how to do it. And that was one way of masking the lack of self-efficacy with bravado and with ego. And so I think that that's an important principle to tie in, and how to support self-efficacy is you may ask yourself, well, how do I do that? I would frame it as, how do I stop doing the opposite of that? Because the opposite of self-efficacy is learned helplessness. And so how can you stop allowing and perpetuating learned helplessness?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because how
do we do that?
That's a great question. And that's where the reflection comes in, is, where are you doing for them what they can do for themselves?
Okay. And I guess I have a hard time sometimes understanding, like, I don't want to be controlling, but I have to have boundaries. So for example, we've been through this for a long time. I have 4 kids from a previous marriage. We have a baby together. Oh, that's him. That's a noise. Especially when I start talking, he wants to talk too. So it's like, I don't want to be controlling or like enforce recovery, but at the same time, he needs to choose into recovery to be able to stay here, and in order to follow the boundaries. Do you know what I mean? So how I'm struggling with like the difference between the two. Oh, I can't hear you again.
Sorry, I muted myself. I think that's a really valid concern everybody has, is where is that line between enforcing compliance and supporting self-efficacy, especially when there's consequences attached to it, like the ability to live together or have a roof over their head. And so my advice and my suggestion to that is it's going way back to chapter 3 in the book, and remembering how we change through the stages of change in each life domain. And in the event that they are in pre-contemplation or contemplation, then allowing natural consequences to their actions helps evoke internal motivation where they are opting in. However, if we go back and the same person is in preparation, then the conversation would look a little bit different, because then you're just illuminating the path and you're saying, here's your black and white choice. If you choose into recovery, you know, I'm okay with you living here. If you don't choose into recovery, if you don't opt in, this is where my help ends. This is where I end and where you begin, so that you're not enforcing or reinforcing learned helplessness. And every situation is going to have its nuances, because it might have to do with finances, it might have to do with their living arrangement, it might have to do with transportation. And so that's why it's hard to give specific advice for every single person's case, but it's easy to go back and just say, you know, for yourselves to ask the questions, what stage of change are they in? And depending on what stage of change they're in, it's going to give you a timeline of when you can expect change, and or more likely expect change. So if they're in pre-contemplation, it's going to be a while before they opt into recovery for themselves. And so that's where you can stop doing the enabling and do more of the allowing the natural consequences to work on their behalf. But if they're in the preparation stage of change, then it could be within the next 30 days that they make the change. And then those stages vacillate back and forth. And so you can actually experience a lot of crazy making just trying to identify what stage of change they're in, and then how to help them into the next stage, which is back to the very, very beginning, asking yourselves the question, what can I control and what can't I control? And are you wasting your energy and exhausting your bandwidth in trying to get an outcome that you can't control, which is the volition and the want to change? You can't want that for them more than they want it. I mean, you can, but as you know, it doesn't work. It's like trying to force you to go to the gym and to change your lifestyle, and you may not see it as a need. You may not see it as something that you're ready to do. So for that reason, supporting self-efficacy a lot of times is really just ask yourself the question. And I'm doing this right now with my 4-year-old twins. My daughter will constantly ask me to do things for her, like, Dad, my shirt's inside out, can you fix it? And I'm so quick to do that for her. I'm so quick to like go and make her a snack, or I'm quick to do, and I have to step back and ask myself the question, is this something that she can do for herself? And can I just be a support to her? And most of the time, yes, she can do it herself. And so I need to teach her how to be self-reliant. I need to teach her how to be able to do things on her own, because I don't want her growing up to be a teenager or a college student that doesn't know how to pay a bill, and that doesn't know how to do housework, or doesn't know how to do laundry. I can't tell you how many clients I've treated over the years where they are 40, 45 years old, 50 years old, and they are as helpless as my 4-year-old daughter, because they've just been, they have learned helplessness. And I was a perfect example of that too, for a lot of years, as far as bills, taking on life. I just shirked my responsibility, knowing that my parents were going to solve it for me. And they would run around town trying to fix my credit score and try to pay off bad debt, and all of that was teaching me how to be helpless, and that things will just work out if I just, you know, if I just avoid these responsibilities, things will just work out. And that is absolutely not the message that we want to foster, but rather foster that I know you got it in you. I know you got it in you, that you can change, you can do this. If they're like, I don't, it's like, perfect, because I know people that can actually help you tap into that. And that's where the professionals come in. And a good therapist is going to evoke and support self-efficacy. They're not going to take the credit for someone else's change. They're going to draw out the internal reasons why one might want to consider change. And so the results aren't as quick. You're not going to see it happen overnight after one conversation around self-efficacy. But the more you think and ask yourself that question, can my addicted loved one do this themselves? Or is it just easier for me to do it, and so I'm doing it? Or can't they do it? And if they can't do it, I kind of view it how it's a little bit like how I view God helping me, which is he will step in and do for me what I can't do for myself, but he also allows me to do things for myself to teach me not how to be helpless, but to help me grow along spiritual lines and grow as an adult. So I know that was a long breath right there, but we're
Well,
wrapping
thank
up in
you.
time.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you,
That was a lot.
Ashley.
Thank you.
Jen, I'll pass it back to you.
Okay, we are just about out of time, but I want to open it up for anybody that has any final thoughts before we head into the end of this week.
I took some notes on the last reading. We're in a support group with Amy, and what really hit me was that codependency is to love our addicts to death. And writing that out and looking at that, for 20 years, I was helping Darren kill himself because I was rescuing, I was setting boundaries, temporary boundaries. And it's been 20 years, but I can't get sober for him. So there had to be boundaries set, and listening to Ashley, with her husband saying, take my keys, take my wallet, take my credit cards, and moving back in. Something that I learned from Jason was that in that 15 minutes when that's happening, he really means it. He really honestly means what he's saying. But then 15 minutes later, it's a whole different world. That's behind him. And because they live like in 15-minute intervals. And when I learned that, because my son would tell me, Mom, I know. And he would listen to me and talk about wearing yourself out for 20 years because I thought I could fix him. But when those boundaries were set, it was like, here's the boundaries. Here's you. Here's the rest of our family. And until you decide that you're going to get sober, it's going to stay like that. And it did. And also I learned from Amy when we've had our discussions and our class is that things don't change until things change. And since we have no control over them, and maybe they're in a position where they're not willing to change, we need to change and set those boundaries and not let those boundaries change. That was hard, but boy, did I see changes in him after I decided to change. And it was, in watching it unfold, I'm like, yeah. I mean, it was 20 years that I wasn't educated. And now that I am, it's like, I wish I would have known this 20 years ago, but I'm thankful for the position that I'm in now. And he has been sober for, well, he's graduating from Brick House on the 18th of this month, and he's been sober for almost 9 months. So I saw in fact, I told him, I said, because he calls me after every AA meeting he goes to, and he just tells me how it went. And I told him, I said, you know what, Darren, I said, I just this morning was thanking Heavenly Father for you becoming who he created you to be. I'm so thankful for that. And there's just, right now, what he has is so much gratitude. And so that's what we're experiencing now today, because I know it's a step away and things can fall apart, but he has stayed sober through his class and dependent on God. And it's been a beautiful experience. And so I'm going to take it every day, and I'm just going to enjoy it and appreciate it and have gratitude for, you know, God who's made this possible.
Thanks, Pam. I'm listening to you talk, and the one thing that just keeps coming back to me when you talk about nothing changes until nothing changes, and that you wish you had known this before. Like, it all to me goes back to, we control what we can, and the only thing that we can control is ourselves,
Right.
and what we do, and how we react and respond. And the funny thing about that is, so often when we put and understand where our control lies, it enables the ability for our addict to maybe not be as comfortable and to have some natural consequences. And that is what evokes the internal change inside of everybody. And so I go back to that, Pam. I thank you so much for saying that, because what I know today is the only thing that I can control is how I react and respond in a situation.
Absolutely.
And I, like you, sounds like, took me a hot second to figure it out. But when you figure it out, there is so much peace and serenity just in that alone. So again, thank you so much for sharing that with us today. I again thank you guys for coming today. As you can see, our fearless leader has returned, so he will be leading this call next week. But I'm so grateful that you guys are all here, and that I get to do this with all of you, because I cannot and choose not to do it by myself anymore. So thank you all.
Love you guys. Thank you.
Jennifer. Thank you, Jason.
You're welcome. See ya.
Thanks, guys. Great job.